Welcome to Kalos' Gaming Table. I am Kalos. I've gone over fast but fragile light mechs. I've discussed the workhorses of both the Inner and the clans, medium mechs. Both light and medium mechs are utilitarian, used for scouting and reconnaissance, dealing with pesky infantry, and a bit of skullduggery with tag. They can flank the Op-4, causing them to split fire or to focus on other targets. When push comes to shove, they can also be used to directly attack the Op-4. That subtlety goes out the window with the sledgehammers of BattleTech, the heavy BattleMechs. Ranging between 60 and 75 tons, heavy BattleMechs are clad in thicker armor plus armed with more and heavier weapons. Towering over the battlefield, heavy mechs wreak havoc and lay waste to everything before them. Sure, some might keep up with medium mechs, not all are armed with PPCs, but heavy mechs are something the opposing side can't ignore, at least not for long. Heavy mechs are fun to play, able to dish the pain and also take a beating. Heavy mechs are also iconic. The Timberwolf is arguably the face of the franchise. For 3 editions of A Game of Armored Combat, the 70-ton Warhammer graced the cover. Technical Readout 3025 had the Marauder. Going back to the beginning, you had the Thunderbolt, the Crusader, the Rifleman, the Archer, the Warhammer, and the Marauder. All original, later unseen, but are also all iconic to the franchise. There are more, to be sure. The Catapult, the Dragon, and the Orion come to mind. Heavy mechs have evolved over time. When Battle Droids was first conceived, the setting was supposed to be Mad Max, but with giant stompy robots. Weapons of war, many mechs were centuries old and MacGyvered together with any parts, weapons, and armor that could be salvaged or stolen. Sure, your Warhammer might have a fresh coat of paint and look like it just walked off the assembly line, but the PPCs might be from different manufacturers. The various actuators and linkages could have been salvaged from a dozen different battlefields, and keeping a heavy mech in working order, not to mention making sure that the ammo bins are at least partially full, would tax the scrounging skills of the most ingenious supply officer. Optimization was not the nature of things at the end of the Third Succession War, 3025-ish, when a lot of us first started the game. Sure, those are iconic heavy mechs, and let's face it, the Rifleman 3N looks very cool. At 60 tons, it's armed with 2 large lasers, 2 medium lasers, and 2 AC5s. It has 10 heat... Wait, let me double check that. Yep. It has 10 heat sinks. So if you plan to alpha strike, you're going to... let me grab my calculator. Let's see, 2 times 8 for the large lasers, 2 heat for the ACs, and 6 from the medium lasers for a total of... 24 heat in a turn. And that doesn't include any heat from movement. So, if you fire everything standing still, that means you're going to be up to 14 heat after the heat sinks dissipate 10, which will force a shutdown roll. Good times. Yes, I know selective fire is a thing, but if I have the weapons, I want to use them. All of them. With such a variety of weapons, so many of these brutes also lack armor. To be fair, with the unseen mechs, FASA looked at the art and models and said, oh, that's a PPC, that's an autocannon, and once upon a time, it was just autocannon. One of the most iconic heavies, the Warhammer 6R, has a variety of weapons. 2 PPCs, an SRM 6-pack, 2 medium lasers, 2 small lasers, and 2 machine guns for infantry who just want to rethink their life choices. It also has a total of 18 heat sinks. Just firing both PPCs by themselves and you'll start to build heat while standing still. If your finger slips on the triggers and you add the medium lasers, that heat is going to start to spike. Like I said, optimization was not the name of the game in that old era of BattleTech. Now, despite these faults, almost all 3025 mechs were in the same boat, namely a mixed bag of armor, poor heat management, and weapon loadouts all over the place. You knew the Op-4 would have the same limitations, so it was not that big of a deal. BattleTech is a game of fire and maneuver, so you maximize your advantages while minimizing the worst parts of your mech. Some of this started to change with the recovery of the Helm memory core. Things like double heat sinks and endosteel started to return to the inner sphere. As case began to re-emerge, ammo-dependent mech jockeys breathed a sigh of relief. If a mech's ammo was stored in a side torso, and it had case, an ammo crit would still be bad, but no longer catastrophic. If you've never seen or had a mech with 200 rounds of machine gun ammo go up like a New Year's celebration due to an unlucky crit, have you even really played BattleTech? Of course, all of these improvements paled to the bulldozer that were the invading clans. In 3050, the descendants of the Kerensky Exodus returned to the inner sphere with a chip the size of Everest on their shoulder. The clans hit the sphere with no warning. The periphery and great houses were suddenly pit against a civilization that hadn't destroyed its manufacturing base or set all its technological progress back by centuries. Clan mechs hit like a heavyweight boxer. Their weapons did more damage, had a longer range, and heat did not seem to be an issue. These new mechs moved faster, were more accurate, and were near impossible to take down. This shocked both the inner sphere militaries as well as the BattleTech player base. The clans also introduced a new style of battle mech, the omnimech. BattleMechs have a set amount of criticals, meaning that a mech can only take a certain amount of weapons or tech in each location. It took time and a lot of techs to remove weapon components, such as an AC-10, and replace them with something else, like maybe a PPC. OmniMechs introduced the concept of an omnipod, where entire pods of weapons and tech were plugged into the omnimech. Need to fight in a prolonged engagement? The clan warrior could have a more dedicated energy weapon loadout added. Looking for a short but brutal battle? Replace those energy weapon omnipods with autocannons and watch enemy armor vanish with each trigger pull. Whereas the inner sphere might have a couple of different variants for each mech, the clans often had 4 or more different variants and all hot swappable. A Timberwolf Prime could become a Timberwolf A or B with a quick refit, whereas replacing a Marauder's AC-5 with a large laser was timed with the techs in a repair bay. The BattleTech player base got to see how a battle mech that had been optimized could dominate the battlefield. It was about this point that the whole Mad Max with big stumpy robots kind of faded away. The rarity of battle mechs in the inner sphere became a memory as more factories came online and started pumping out new mechs and equipment. The inner sphere players also wanted the same toys that the clan players enjoyed. One of the biggest technological returns to help bring the inner sphere into more parity with the clans were double heat sinks. Granted, inner sphere double heat sinks were still inferior to the clan DHSs, but every little bit helps. ER weapons also made a comeback. With those advancements, the inner sphere now had a fighting chance. Having said that, most clan weapons still outranged their inferior inner sphere weapons, and in some cases did more damage than even the old Starleague tech. The Timberwolf, the clan omnimech, is a brute on the battlefield. The Timberwolf Prime boasts 2 large ER lasers, 2 ER medium lasers, 2 LRM-20s, 1 medium pulse laser, and if you happen to get dumb enough to get within 3 hexes, 2 machine guns to add insult to injury. Factor in 15 double heat sinks and this thing will wreck shop. The Timberwolf A is a headhunting nightmare. Armed with 2 ER PPCs, these beasts do 15 points of damage apiece. If you roll boxcars for damage, it's all over for the enemy mech. But wait, there's more. If the Op-4 happens to get in closer, it also has 3 medium pulse lasers, 1 ER small laser, and a Streak SRM 6-pack. You can get the Timberwolf A for the low price of 2,854 battle value. The Timberwolf B changes up its long-range firepower for a Gauss rifle and a large pulse laser. One of the most powerful clan weapons, the clan large pulse laser does 10 points of damage and has a range bracket of 6, 14, 20. By comparison, the inner sphere large pulse laser does 10 points of damage, but only has a range bracket of 3, 7, 10. The Timberwolf B also has an LRM-10 with Artemis, a small pulse laser, and an SRM 4-pack, also with Artemis. It only costs 2,224 battle value. The Mad Dog Prime is another iron-gloved clan heavy mech. The Prime is armed with 2 LRM-20s for long-range destruction, 2 large pulse lasers for less long-range destruction, and 2 medium pulse lasers for close-in destruction. 12 double heatsinks help keep it cool as it runs across the battlefield, demolishing its enemies. Now, not all clan mechs are optimized equally. The Hellbringer Prime is a 65-ton heavy mech armed with 2 ER PPCs, 3 ER medium lasers, 1 Streak SRM-6, 2 machine guns, and 4 anti-personnel pods. On paper, this thing is going to be a scythe going through inner sphere wheat. The problem is, it has construction paper for armor. Its weak side torso armor means if it takes 1 clan ER PPC to a torso, you are already rolling criticals. Get behind the Hellbringer and it gets even worse. The Hellbringer is a textbook definition of a glass cannon. Sure, it's going to ruin the day of anyone within range, but if you gang up on the Hellbringer, somebody is going to punch through. All of those delicious clan goodies are great, but there is one big drawback. They are expensive. I mean, really expensive. The Marauder 5D, one of the first Marauder variants updated from the Helm memory core, was pretty spiffy. It's now armed with 2 ER PPCs, 2 medium pulse lasers, and the autocannon was replaced with a large pulse laser. To round things out, it also added an SRM-2 with case. It has increased armor, making it a tough mech. Jump jets were added for mobility, and 16 double heat sinks means that it can run and fire both ER PPCs without going up heat. With a 4-5 pilot, the Marauder 5D is 1,787 battle value, which is 424 more than the Marauder 3R. The Timberwolf Prime, with all of its toys, is 2,737 battle value. That is also with a 4-5 pilot. Almost 1,000 full points more than the Marauder 5D. Sure, it would be a slug match, but the Timberwolf Prime would just outdo the Marauder 5D. Now, what happens if you take that additional 1k battle value and add another mech to help distract or hit the Timberwolf while it's focusing on the Marauder? That might be a more even fight. If you want to make the pilot of your Timberwolf a typical clanner, namely 3 gunnery and 4 piloting, you're looking at spending a whopping 3,613 points. Even the Mad Dog Prime with its loadout comes out to 2,351 battle value, over 550 points more than the 5D. This might be a closer fight, but having 2 LRM-20s blasting you at range isn't fun. And then if you do get in range of the pulse lasers, the Marauder is going to hate life. I contend that that is the big reason that Battle Value 1 and later Battle Value 2 were created due to the invading clans. Before the invasion, we would just use tonnage to determine the size of games, and you could reasonably balance battles. It wasn't perfect, but both sides had the same weapons and limitations, so it did come down to fire and maneuver, and with lady luck, blessing or cursing your dice. The whole notion of basing the game around tonnage went out the window when the clans invaded. 200 tons of inner sphere mechs versus 200 tons of clan mechs is not a fun or a fair fight. It also didn't help that the lore of the clans was still slowly being written, and most of the players in my area back in the day didn't know about, or more than likely didn't care about, Bidding or Zellbriggen. They just played like inner sphere pilots who had just got new toys and monkey stomped the inner sphere opposition. This, quite possibly, is why so many OG players actively dislike the clans to this day, despite BV2 balancing. In 3050, the clans were making a beeline for Terra. They didn't run into anything remotely resembling opposition while out in the periphery, but resistance increased as they started to hit the more defended and better trained Great House forces. The clans were still bloodying the noses of the Great Houses, but losses were incurred. There was a brief respite in the fighting after Tira Miraborg and her Shalone fighter kamikazed into the clan flagship, killing Leo Showers and Ulrich Karinsky. The clans withdrew, for a time, to elect a new Khan, and gave the Inner Sphere a tiny amount of breathing room. The clans would be back. The Inner Sphere was given the opportunity to take some of the salvage that they had found and try and reverse engineer it. The Battle of Tukayyid changed the course of history in the Inner Sphere forever. Comstar had somehow kept old Star League units hidden for a couple of centuries with none of the great houses the wiser. These now ancient designs had been carefully stored and painstakingly maintained, with Comstar's soldiers training with them but never actually using them in battle. That ended when the clans were given what they so desperately wanted, a battle on their terms. A batchall was declared by Comstar, essentially for the future of the Inner Sphere, and the clans accepted. And then Comstar showed the clans how the Inner Sphere waged war. Comstar would defend cities spread throughout Tukayyid, and the clans had to take them. 7 invading clans participated: Clan Wolf, Clan Jade Falcon, Clan Ghost Bear, Clan Diamond Shark, Clan Nova Cat, Clan Steel Viper, and Clan Smoke Jaguar. If the clans won, they'd be able to continue on their march towards Terra unchecked by Comstar. If Comstar won, the clans would halt their advance for 15 years. The clans bid their forces down, as is their nature, knowing deep in their genetically engineered hearts that nothing the Inner Sphere could bring would stop them. Their purebred mech warriors would utterly annihilate the freeborn Comstar soldiers. For 200 years they had been training, improving their weapons, and telling themselves nothing could stand in their way. The Battle of Tukayyid is well documented. However you feel about Fox's prosecution of the battle, ultimately Comstar won. Not only did it win, but it crippled and all but destroyed the majority of the invading clan forces. Clan Wolf was the only clan to secure its objectives, with Clan Ghost Bear and Clan Jade Falcon taking a draw. Many of the best clan warriors, including Khans and Sakans, men and women trained from birth to drive BattleMechs and wage war, were slain. More importantly, the amount of battlefield salvage that was recovered helped kickstart new innovations within the Inner Sphere. Thank you for indulging me on that little history lesson. I'm trying to lay some context of the massive changes that would go through the Inner Sphere, both with the design of new mechs and the refits of existing ones. The Inner Sphere would not be able to recreate clan tech for some time, but by reverse engineering salvaged mechs and parts, a lot of new ideas and tech could be integrated. Many design elements would find their way into future Inner Sphere design, and it would become imperative that new tech would have to be incorporated into older models, and new designs would have it built in from the ground up. I've gone over the Warhammer 6R and its pros and cons. The Warhammer 8D took everything iconic from the original Warhammer and made it better. The 2 signature PPCs were upgraded to ER PPCs. Yes, I know they're not nearly as sexy as the clan ER PPCs, but they still reach out and punch someone at a longer range. The 8D also had 16 double heat sinks, giving it 32 heat dissipation. That means that it can run and fire both ER PPCs and remain heat neutral. It also had 2 ER medium lasers and a Streak SRM6 with case for medium support, and 2 ER small lasers for point-blank annoyance. It even dumped the machine guns. Yes, I know it doesn't have enough heat sinks to alpha strike and remain heat neutral, but once it closes in, it can cycle and sometimes fire just 1 PPC and everything else. Remember, ER PPCs do not have the same minimum range penalties as a standard PPC. The 8D is better armored and able to take some big punches. It also doesn't have an XL engine, so even if you take out a side torso, it's still going to come at you. Many new heavy mechs do include an XL engine, and in many ways that makes them more fragile. The Dragonfire is a heavy mech that took advantage from a lot of the tech gleaned from the Helm Memory Core. It's a beast of a mech sporting an LBX AC-10, a Gauss rifle, a large laser, and 2 medium lasers. The XL engine allows it to move pretty quickly for a heavy mech, and it does have 10 double heat sinks to handle most of the heat generated. Like any other Inner Sphere mech with an XL engine, side torso kills are its greatest vulnerability. A clan mech can take 1 side torso destruction and still limp off the battlefield, because clan XL engines only take up 2 critical slots per torso. Inner Sphere XL engines still take up 3 critical slots per torso, so once that armor starts to vanish, you run the risk of a side torso kill. Personally, I don't mind a mech designed from the ground up with an XL engine, because generally they're going to have more armor and more movement to help generate a TMF. But taking a tried and true zombie mech like a Warhammer or a Thunderbolt and adding an XL engine is just folly to me. The Inner Sphere, not wanting to be left out, got into the omnimech game pretty quickly. After reverse engineering salvage from Tukayyid, the Inner Sphere started releasing their own omnimechs. The AV-1-0 Avatar went into production in 3056. The Avatar was armed with 1 LBX AC-10, 2 medium pulse lasers, 2 LRM-10s with Artemis, and 2 machine guns. It does have a movement of 4.6, allowing it to keep up with most other heavies. At 1,395 battle value, the Avatar isn't too expensive. The Avatar A changes things up with a massive AC-20, 1 ER large laser, 2 medium lasers, and 2 SRM 6-packs. The AV-1-A Avatar is 1,481 battle value. Want an LRM boat? The Avatar B has 2 LRM-15s and 2 LRM-20s, all with Artemis. For close-in support, it has 2 medium lasers. The B variant of the Avatar will cost you 1,496 battle value. The BHKU-0 Blackhawk Ku is another example of an Innersphere Omni from the Draconis Combine. It's a take on the Clan Blackhawk/Nova. At 60 tons, it sports 4 medium pulse lasers, 6 medium lasers, and 2 small lasers. It is quite mobile at 585, but does need an XL engine to power all of those weapons. BHKU-0 Blackhawk KU will run you 1,731 battle value. Where the Blackhawk KU-0 is a medium-range brawler, the Blackhawk KU-A hits at long range with 2 ERPPCs and has 2 anti-missile systems to deal with incoming missile fire. The BHKU-A costs 1,770 battle value. There are also multiple other configurations for these Innersphere omnimechs. The Dragon is a 60-ton mech with a smattering of weapons all over the place. An LRM-10, an AC-5, and 2 medium lasers. It's well armored and pretty fast, and it's a decent brawler, but not much at range. The Quick Draw is lightly armored and primarily used for short-range support. It's mobile though, allowing it to keep up with a lance of medium mechs. The LRM-10 is good for range, and the SRM-4 and 4 medium lasers can give smaller mechs pause before closing in. It's not great against other mechs of the same tonnage or heavier, but it can certainly discourage lighter mechs. The Catapult C1 is a good long-range support mech. At 65 tons, it's armed with 2 LRM-15s and 4 medium lasers. The downside is that it has a small amount of LRM ammo, and once those ammo bins run dry, you'll be closing in to use the medium lasers. The Thunderbolt 5S is a brute for 65 tons. It's almost maxed armored with 1 large laser, 1 LRM-15, 3 medium lasers, 1 SRM-2, and 2 machine guns. For a bit more mobility, take the Thunderbolt 5SE. It loses the SRM-2 and the machine guns, trades the LRM-15 for an LRM-10, but it also adds jump jets. I don't want to leave out a personal favorite of mine, the Orion 1K. This zombie brute was favored by Alexander Kerensky. It can blast you with an LRM-15, an AC-10, 2 medium lasers, and an SRM-4. It might not be fast, but it has a lot of armor to chew through, and while you try to take it down, it's going to close and smack you around. And those are just some of the heavies from Technical Readout 3025. Going into later eras, you're going to find future variants of many of these mechs with more armor, better thought out weapons, and double heat sinks. The Axeman from Technical Readout 3050 is a mech with an axe. Not only will it close and hit you with an AC-20, 3 medium lasers, and 1 large pulse laser, if it gets close enough, then it's going to whack you in the head with its axe. The Capellan Confederation's Caesar is 70 tons of nastiness, armed with a Gauss rifle, an ERPPC, and 4 medium pulse lasers. It does have to be careful as it does mount an XL engine, but with the Gauss and the ERPPC, it can stay at range, falling back on the pulse lasers if anything decides to get close. The Merlin, MLN-1A from TRO 3058, is a decent, well-rounded mech. It is 60 tons and is armed with a PPC, 2 medium lasers, 1 LRM-15, 1 machine gun, and a flamer for good measure. It has jump jets, giving it mobility, and is a decent skirmisher against a smaller force. So what do you use your heavy mechs for? Usually you use a heavy mech to send a message. That message is delivered with a lead pipe. They're typically slower than your lights and mediums, but make up for it with their thicker armor and more weapons. That allows many heavy mechs to advance and get in the Op-4's face. Depending upon the mission, some heavies might sit in the back and rain LRMs and PPC fire into the Op-4. For those faster heavies, you could put them in a command lance of medium mechs. It can keep up and should be able to add a little bit of extra firepower against a lighter foe. Mechs like the Dragonfire are also equipped with ECM, so despite being 75 tons, it can disrupt C3 networks and Artemis LRMs. Archers and catapults can sit back and rain LRMs on the Op-4 with impunity, at least until their ammo bins run dry. Future eras also start to incorporate new tech. Want a heavy mech that has a nasty punch but is hard to hit? The Warhammer 4L has 2 ERPPCs, 4 medium pulse lasers, a Street SRM 6-pack, and stealth armor allowing it to shoot from range while being difficult to be shot at. Just keep in mind that the stealth armor, when active, does generate heat. Are you like me and love the Hunchback 4P but wish it had more armor? Take the Flashman 8K. You can hit targets at long range with 3 large lasers, then finish them off at close range with 5 medium lasers. Infantry bothering you? Then throw them a barbecue with a head-mounted flamer. This monster has 15 double heat sinks, giving it the ability to fire a large chunk of its weapons. This is one of my favorite heavy mechs from the clan invasion going forward. The Penetrator is a 75-ton mech with near maxed out armor. It's going to hammer you with 2 ER large lasers and 6 medium pulse lasers. It can jump into the fray, unleash hell, and then jump out when things get spicy. The Summoner Prime is 70 tons of clan goodness. 1 LBX-10, 1 LRM-15, and 1 ERPPC makes sure it hits hard, and there's so many other different variations to choose from. The Black Python is another great mech to hunt down fast mechs with high TMMs. With its 2 large pulse lasers, 2 medium pulse lasers, and 4 small pulse lasers, it will cut away that TMM edge. The 2 machine guns will also help it mow down any infantry in its vicinity. In general, you're going to use heavy mechs to wreck shop. They have the armor to take a lot of hits and the firepower to dish out pain. By concentrating fire, 2 or 3 heavy mechs can remove threats from the battlefield. Many of these will cover all of your range brackets, but it's good to make sure that you also have some close-in support as well. That's not nearly an issue for the clan mechs, especially with clan LRMs not having any minimum range. Filthy cheating clanners. Need to wipe out an OPFOR? Heavy mechs will get the job done. Need to try and stop an OPFOR from exiting the battlefield? Heavy mechs will have you covered, making a very difficult line to get past. Need to cross a battlefield quickly? There you might struggle a bit. Most heavy mechs run at 4.6 or at best 5.8. Not terribly slow, but unless there's a lot of terrain to block and provide cover, you will be seen, and if you can be seen, you can be shot at. Depending upon the size of the battle, heavy mechs can also be used as a distraction. If you see 2 or 3 heavy mechs advancing into range, do you split your fire between them and the lighter units? Do you try and weaken them while a different lance moves into position? Do you run the risk of PPCs, LRMs, and Gauss slugs tearing into your mechs? Heavy mechs can generally take a bit of pounding before they are forced to withdraw or are rendered combat ineffective. Heavy mechs are also good for an inner line defense. They can be slower than most light and medium mechs, but if you're assaulting an area and find it's being protected by a lance of heavies, that might force you to play a bit more cautiously. The defenders don't have to split fire and can concentrate on enemy units advancing on them, whereas the attacking units might have to split fire, splitting between mechs and their targets, all at the same time taking a face full of damage while trying to complete their mission. Heavy mechs are a tool, and an expensive one at that. You might not need a scalpel to cut out a piece of shrapnel, but you might need an axe to remove a limb. Heavy mechs, especially those without exo engines, are notorious for fighting until they're cored, true zombie mechs. I had a Thunderbolt who lost both torsos, but because there were still 2 medium lasers in the center torso and it had taken no engine hits, it still kept on the offensive. Yeah man, I didn't hear no bell. Heavy mechs might be the linchpin of a battle, drawing fire away from less hardy targets, or getting into position to hammer the enemy. Don't waste your heavies, but at the same time, don't treat them like a light mech. They are bruisers, giving as good, if not better, than they get. Engineers also show that you can give old mechs new tricks by upgrading designs centuries old with tech that allows them to thrive in future eras. As long as they have extra armor and an abundance of weapons, heavy mechs will be seen on battlefields. Heavy mechs are fun to play and have great value on the battlefield. Your opponent can't ignore them, at least not for long. Heavy BattleMechs seem to have the largest representation in plastics from CGL as well. If you enjoyed this video and like the content that I create, please like, subscribe, ring the bell, and share my video with other viewers. This helps my channel grow. I'm currently at 183 subscribers and I'd like to hit 200 soon. Every little bit helps. Thank you. What is your favorite heavy mech? Do you prefer clan or inner sphere heavies? Do you have tales of a heavy mech that turned into a zombie mech that refused to go down? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll catch you in the next video.